Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we're going to continue our series on the best albums in the history of music, and we're going to look at 10 more of the most influential albums of the past century or so. Before we start, I need to mention again that we are not creating an exhaustive list of the best albums in history. We're not creating any ranking here. Maybe it is somewhat of a list of the best albums in history for me at least, but the albums that we're going to be looking at today and in hopefully the next episodes are albums which have been included on several rankings across the years and also have been widely recognized by audiences and critics as being among the most important musical pieces of the last century. Without giving too much away, we're going to have some Beatles, obviously. We're going to have Queen, because we talked last time about an album that I left out of the list for the previous episode. We're going to have a lot of other albums, some of them recommended in comments by you, and we're going to cover genres from rock, pop rock, to even hip-hop. So, if you're curious to see what albums we have for you today, stick around. The first piece we're going to start with today is a Beatles album, and that is, as you can see, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Now, this was one of the albums which made the rankings of the best albums ever in history for many years, and more recently on rankings like the Rolling Stones, tops of the best albums ever. It's started to be overtaken by Revolver when it comes to the Beatles, but still, it is one of the best regarded and has a historical significance as being one of the first tentatives of concept album. As John Lennon put it later, it didn't really fully succeed at being that, but it did influence a lot of musicians, and it's one of the most referenced albums by other musicians when it comes to, music or albums that influenced their careers. So this is a 1982 Japanese mono pressing. I've presented it before on the channel on the episode, on the Beatles album series episode related to Sgt. Pepper. So you've seen it before. It still has the OB strip, as you can see here, and it is in pristine condition. At least the cover looks absolutely amazing, as you can see. The back as well is a little bit dark red, but it hasn't lost any of its color. And even inside, you will see, aside from certain spots here that maybe you can notice, it looks absolutely amazing still. And this one also has about 43 years since it was released, not to mention the original album from 1967, of course. Now, the album was recorded between December of 66 and April of 67. When it came out, it also was accompanied in the same period by a double-A single, the Strawberry Fields Forever and Penny Lane double-A single, which George Martin later mentioned that he kind of regretted they didn't include it on the album. That was very, very successful single, but at the same time, this was anyway successful on its own. Even at that time, it spent 22 consecutive weeks at the top of the UK charts, and it spent 15 weeks in a Billboard chart. It was 11 times, I think, or 12 times certified platinum. So it was definitely extremely successful at the time, even though it was a departure from what people were used to when it came to Beatles music. Obviously, Revolver was the first step towards that. It had some songs there that sort of foreshadowed the psychedelic era of the Beatles. And they did have a lot more variety than in previous albums on Revolver, but for sure, Sgt. Pepper, and you can see it and can read some of the reviews online. It was reviews by critics and of course the fans, and it showed that it was a bit of a shock for the Beatles fandom at the time, but it did help the band move towards its next stage, and it has remained a historical piece in the history of music. Now let's take a look just at briefly at what we have in here. We have this sheet as well with the lyrics that is specific to Japanese releases. And we also have the record itself. The album at that time, and as I showed in some of the previous videos, came also with a cardboard sheet of cutouts, a green one with some cutouts of the band and other things, I think. And then, so it kind of was one of the first ones to have this kind of bonus material. The Beatles album, the White Album, will come with even more of that. Let's take a brief look at the record. We've seen it on the channel before. Soon, when the Beatles box set, mono box set, will be re-released, I will also have the mono version from that box set. But this one still looking extremely nice, red translucent vinyl. And I mentioned before, this sounds absolutely incredible still. Still on the fence a bit about keeping this when the new box set comes. I'm trying to not keep too many duplicates sort of albums, at least when it comes to different mixes and different formats. But yeah, I'm not sure yet. I kind of tend to keep it. It looks so amazing and it sounds so amazing. But yeah, the first record for today, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band from 1967, the Beatles. Next on the list, because we also missed it the last time, and holding one of the greatest rock singles in the history of music, Bohemian Rhapsody, is Queen's A Night at the Opera. This was released in 1975. It was recorded in 1975 across various studios in a few months. Bohemian Rhapsody alone apparently took 3 weeks to record. It has a lot of iconic music on it. Aside from Bohemian Rhapsody, I think as of late, Love of My Life has become a more successful song than it was at the time of the album release. I think it kind of started with some of the commercials in the 90s or late 90s, early 2000s. I forget which brand of beer used the song as a commercial with people in a bar singing it. And now it's also become more successful along with the release of the Bohemian Rhapsody movie a few years ago. Now, this album kind of moved Queen from just a rock band to something else. They were successful even at the time, but this, I think, shifted their perspective of the world over Queen, and actually in the next years that will be further moved through their subsequent albums and their move towards pop rock and having combinations of different styles within their new albums. But this was still successful at the time. It was number one in the UK charts. It made the top 10 in the Billboard charts. It was, again, multiple times certified platinum. It has an interesting history, again, with Bohemian Rhapsody. Leaving aside the movie that was released a few years ago, Bohemian Rhapsody was unique as a single because it was also charting again in 1991, along with its inclusion in Wayne's World movie. So it's clear it has like a very strong historical meaning for the history of music, not only Queen, and it is one of the most iconic, I think, albums ever. Now, I've read that this has influenced other bands as well, like Muse and Radiohead, but to me, it kind of created a connection with me early on in my childhood because Queen and Freddie Mercury were some of the artists that I had listened to, and I remember listening to as early as 6-7 years old. Bohemian Rhapsody as well. Wayne's World came around 1991, if I'm not mistaken, which was also when I was like 7-8 years old. So for sure, even for me, Queen as a band were very influential, and Bohemian Rhapsody was one of the songs that I remember listening to the earliest in my life. Now, this release is a UK release from 1975, so it's not the first pressing, but it's among the earliest pressings, right? Because it was from the year of the actual release of the album. It is a UK pressing. The cover, I mean, it's a white cover, so it's expected after all of these years to have some yellowing and brownish tints to it, but it still looks quite good, I think. Even the spine, I'm not sure you'll be able to see it, but even the spine looks quite good. The logo on the front is a little bit embossed. Not sure, again, if you can notice that. And some of the credits on the back. It does have a mark of a sticker here, but it's fine, I guess. And the inside with the lyrics as being a gatefold. And let's take a look at the record as well. I can tell you that I bought this online from a person from which I bought a couple of other albums. They all came in pretty good state. I was pretty happy. Very little to no surface noise, so that's great. The inner sleeve, printed cardboard inner sleeve here with the band. Still in very good condition, no seam splits or anything like that. And the record itself. Oh, okay. The label, white label, as you can see, looks really nice. This one has no spots and no marks. So, and the vinyl is quite shiny. 1975's A Night at the Opera, Queen. Another 70s album, and another one recorded through various studios. It took almost a year to fully record. It is Pink Floyd's The Wall from 1979. Now this one, I think I don't have to insist too much upon its legacy in music and its influence. It is a full-blown concept album, the way that Pink Floyd had built others as well. But this was exemplary and exceptional also because it left a lasting legacy through the movie that was made, through the stage show that still goes on, as well as the iconic album cover and the iconic contents of the album itself. It was successful at the time. It spent 15 weeks at the top of the Billboard chart. It's certified platinum over 20 times, I think 23 or something like that. So there is no discussion over the success of the album. Not only the fact that the stage show was still going on up to recent years, it's clear that this is one of the most iconic albums in the history of music. It also was an inspiration for a lot of bands. I saw Nine Inch Nails and Green Day mentioned online. Thing is, for me, what let's say the oldest memory that I have of things related to Pink Floyd's The Wall is one of the sections, the cartoon sections from the movie, which was played along with the track Another Brick in the Wall on Romanian television early in the 90s. And that one kind of stayed with me because, of course, as a little kid looking at something animated, you would expect to see, colorful, happy stuff. But there were a couple of things that I saw even in my early childhood that stayed with me, one was the video of the marching hammers taken from the Wall movie, and the other one was George Orwell's Animal Farm. At least the second part of that stayed with me, and they kind of these two elements kind of seem to have a similar vibe to me then in the beginning of the 90s, even if I didn't really fully understand what they were about. This is a UK pressing from the year of the release, 1979. As you can see, again, as an album with a sort of white-based color, it has some yellowing and sort of passage of time marks on it, but otherwise looks pretty good. No significant rips, tears, or marks on it. And the inside, of course, very nice with the sort of graffiti type design. And we're going to take a look at least one of the records. They are stored in these lyrics inner sleeves. Okay. That still also look quite good. Again, no tears, no rips in them. I've put them also in these black poly inners just to try to protect them from further scuffs and scratches. But as you can see, labels still look pristine. The records are in really good condition after a cleaning. I was surprised to hear, to listen to them, and they sound almost like new. And I have to say that when it comes to Pink Floyd, The Wall is my favorite album. So I understand that Dark Side of the Moon is maybe better appreciated album from Pink Floyd, but to me, The Wall will still remain the favorite. I think it's a very cohesive experience, and it just tells this full story, this rounded story, in a very, very masterful way. So here we are, Pink Floyd's The Wall from 1979. Next, we're going to more funk pop, funk rock type of music, R&B influences even, and we're talking about 1984's Prince and the Revolution's Purple Rain. This was a hugely inspirational album for artists like Bruno Mars and I don't know, Beyonce and others. It is one of the most well-known albums of Prince's. Obviously, it was the soundtrack for the Purple Rain movie, but also worth mentioning that it's one of the most iconic albums of the 80s. And it's considered to be, I think I saw this kind of thing written online, like Prince's defining statement. It is an incredible album, aside from the title track, which of course is one of the best known tracks of Prince's. And this is a 2020 pressing of it. Now, you'll see for many of the albums I have, especially the ones from like the 60s and 70s and some of the 80s ones as well, I prefer the older full analog pressings from those years. Even with some of those albums, or some of the at least 80s albums, I do have pressings that are more recent, so pressings from the past 10 years, let's say. Some of them are fully analog, and you will see some of them today as well. Some of them are not. Very few of them are actually not AAA, as they're called today. So even if I'm getting a newer pressing, at least with some of the albums, I try to get the analog newer pressings, which sometimes happens. And in some of the cases, they are really, really excellent pressings. Now, this one from 2020 sounds quite excellent. This is an album that has gotten, reprinted, repressed many, many times over, even in the past decades. So you'll find a lot of versions. This one was one where I read some good reviews on it. I got it, I tested it out, it sounds excellent. So yeah, this is the 2020, one of the 2020 represses of Prince and the Revolution, Purple Rain. Another reason for why I got this copy, it was one of the ones which had this note on it, LP remastered by Prince. There were others which said LP remaster overseen by Prince or something like that, but this one apparently had Prince's stamp of approval. Right, we have a few things inside before I show the record. Okay, 1 second. We have this printed inner sleeve. Okay, I'm clearly not using it. I'm keeping it as pristine as possible. We have this poster, which I'm gonna try to open up for you. Prince and the Revolution. Nice enough, I would say. Okay, and let's take a look at the record as well. The white label has some dust on it, some lint, but otherwise it came pretty clean, I have to say, as new records go. And the sound is excellent, at least to my ears. So here we go. Prince, Purple Rain. The next album didn't have the reach and the success of Prince's Purple Rain. Purple Rain was multiple times platinum. Again, it spent I think 15 weeks or something like that in the US Billboard charts, where it topped at #1. This one that I'm going to show you next definitely did not have this kind of success, but I do consider it to be an iconic album for the rock genre, and especially for heavy rock, heavy metal, and everything that came after it. I'm not a super big fan of heavy metal in general. I do have some albums, and you'll see them in the future episodes, but I'm more of kind of a soft rock type of person. So when it comes to heavy metal, I have like picks and many of them are ballads. So yeah, I probably am not the best one to judge this genre, but this album was very influential in the development of the heavy metal subgenre and all of the harder rock subgenres, I think. So this is Deep Purple's In Rock. Now, this was recorded between late 69, early 70. It was released in 1970. It was influential as an album and, you know, Deep Purple as a band to other bands like Metallica, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, and so on. This was, again, mildly successful. I mean, it reached gold status. It charted in the US, I think, it was maybe number 3 or 4 or something like that. I hope I'm not mistaken. But obviously, it did not reach the level of recognition that other albums that I presented so far and ones I will present after this one. But again, the influential status of the album should not be understated. It was an important album from the history of music, and it has an amazing, iconic rock track in Child of Time. It's not the only awesome track on the album, but it is one that is most, I guess, recognizable. Now, the release that I have, and this is one of the ones that I referred to earlier, it is a 2018 release of In Rock. You can see here on the hype sticker, it does mention it was fully remastered from the analog master tapes and is pressed on purple vinyl, which you'll see it in a few moments. This one was widely regarded as one of the good pressings of this album from the later years. So when I looked for it and I looked what version to buy, I was looking at copies from like the 70s and 80s, but then this one kind of caught my eye. It wasn't expensive. It was not very difficult to find, but also it was widely appreciated as sounding amazing. And another thing I can vouch for. I mean, the cover you already know, it is quite iconic, right? With the band sculpted sort of into Mount Rushmore, right? And the record, which you will see in a few seconds, this also is a gatefold. Unfortunately, I have it still in the shrink wrap, so I cannot show you the inside. I don't want to break the shrink wrap just yet, but maybe we'll have the occasion to see it in a future video. The record itself, with this green and yellow Harvest label and on purple vinyl. As you can see, it looks quite amazing and it sounds amazing as well. This is Deep Purple's In Rock. Now, another influential album from the 1970s, specifically from 1971, Marvin Gaye's What's Going On. Now, this was a departure from Marvin Gaye's usual music. Of course, he was a soul, R&B, funk artist with Motown, so it had a very specific type of sound, and kind of the target of the music, was more related to love and these kind of themes, like the romantic love and these kind of themes. But with this album, it was a departure from that, because this was more of a social commentary sort of type of concept album from Marvin Gaye. It was not easily received by executives at Motown initially, but it was released and remains one of the most iconic albums of all time. This one tops a lot of charts and a lot of lists, best of lists for albums. In terms of success at the time, it wasn't as successful as other albums on our list, so it wasn't like number one for how many, multiple weeks or multiple times platinum already. It is platinum, 2 times or 3 times platinum all over the world. It did spend some weeks in certain charts. It was topping the R&B charts, but yeah, it wasn't as widely successful as some of the others. But like I said, nowadays it is at the top of most rankings of best albums ever that you could find on the internet, right? So you will find it almost everywhere. And I think that is also because of the influence that it had on other musicians like Stevie Wonder and Prince, but also because it changed the path of music, at least under the Motown labels. and it gave musicians, I mean, some people are saying that it gave musicians more autonomy. So it kind of was revolutionary in that sense. It marked a turning point in the way that musicians reported themselves to their music. Now the pressing, this is an European, I think it was marked as Netherlands, but it's made in the Czech Republic, as you can see here. European pressing from 2016, nothing extremely special. This was one of the ones where I just looked for more recent pressings to try to find the cleanest sound, so to speak. Hope that kind of makes sense. The cover does not look very well. It looks like a reproduced picture after a reproduced picture. And it looks decent enough, but it doesn't look like, you know, like it probably did with the originals. However, this also contained an inner sleeve. I don't know who prints still cardboard inner sleeves with circle cutout and no poly inners nowadays. I really don't understand this choice by record producers, to be honest. We already know very well that cardboard and paper sleeves tend to leave a lot of scuffs on and residue in the end on the records. I don't know. I'm using again a poly inner sleeve to protect the record. And this is the record, yellow label, as you can see. What I like about this record, to be honest, I wasn't like a huge fan of it when I was a child. I didn't really know about it that much. But when I discovered it, I find it to be a pleasant listen every single time from start to finish on both sides. So this is because there are albums, especially in the rock genre, where, or even some of the others, you will see at least one today that has a couple of duds on it. But this one is, again, a very enjoyable, pleasant listen from start to finish. The sound, I mean, even if you don't know the tracks by heart, they sound familiar, even the first time that you hear them. So that's you know, it's an incredible feat. I think it's similar to what the Beatles were doing, right? Where the songs sounded so perfect, some of them, when you were listening to them, even the first time, it seemed like they were there forever. This is Marvin Gaye's What's Going On. Next, we're gonna have an album from a completely different genre, and I think it's the most recent one on the list today. Yeah, it's the most recent one. Still is from the late 90s, and is an album that has influenced not only musicians, especially musicians within that genre and subgenres, but especially influenced, I think, producers from the year 2000 onwards. And production of music, you know, has reached a new peak after this album, I feel, and people were really taking note of the production on this album for albums that were released from 2000 onwards. Now, obviously, for people who are fans of 60s, 70s, 80s, and a bit 90s music, and who start losing, let's say, interest for some of the music from 2000 onwards, maybe this is not good news, but at the same time, you will see that the best produced and sounding albums from the 2000 onwards do have a bit of influence from this, and maybe at least some of the musicians and producers, you know, got a real wake-up call when this was released back in 1999. And we're talking about Dr. Dre's 2001. Now, this was years in the making, and anyway, Dr. Dre had taken a break from releasing albums for quite a few years before releasing this. It's very apparent from the lyrics of some of the songs as well, because this is heavily referenced in it. Now, I know from when it comes to Dr. Dre, he is an iconic hip-hop figure and music figure, both as an artist and as a producer. So I don't think it's any surprise that one of these lists will have at least one or two or three hip-hop albums, and that at least one or two of those will be Dre's. I think there is a lot of discussion with regards to The Chronic, which was, it is probably considered his most iconic and influential album for the area of hip-hop, and especially because it also sounded quite distinct when it was released in the early 90s. But, and actually, The Chronic will be featured on this channel in one of the future videos, if we will continue this series. But I do think that in terms of the sound, and how the sound has remained until today, I feel like what was on this album was more influential. At least that's my feeling. Like, Still Dre, Forgot About Dre, and the next episode, I think they have this sound pieces that were reproduced so many times afterwards and copied and sampled, and they are just more iconic. Like, if you hear them, you will recognize them instantly. I really feel like if people are not big music fans necessarily, listen just to music occasionally, and if they are not especially hip-hop fans, maybe it'll be harder for them to recognize a track just from the intro if it were from The Chronic. Now, obviously there are millions of people who would, but like the majority of people. But I do feel like the majority of people listening to the intros of some of these tracks will recognize them instantly. So that's why I think it's kind of was more impactful for music, at least for modern music. And it's the reason why I chose this for today. Obviously, when it comes to musicians that was influential for, it's not only that it was influential, but it actually, established or helped establish Eminem as a household name. It has collaboration, of course, with Snoop Dogg. So from that perspective, I don't think there's any debate as to how at least hip-hop music was influenced by it. But this was also quite successful at the time. It was played incessantly. I mean, the songs were played a lot on the radio. It reached multiple times platinum, and so on and so forth. Now, the release. This is a double vinyl release from 2019. You can see, this is a weird choice for this one, so I'm still keeping it in the wrap, but you are not missing anything, because as opposed to others, which sometimes are single record releases, this one is not a gatefold, even though it has 2 discs. This is another choice that I don't really understand nowadays, when you have 2 records, squishing them within the same single sort of pocket cover. I don't see it, but anyway, the record cover is also quite iconic, with the 2001 and the, well, let me keep it here as well, 2001 and the weed symbol. Then the back as well with the track listing. Inside, the record also has this inner sheet. On one side you have the contents and the credits, and on this side that you are seeing right now, we have Dr. Dre himself. And let's take a look at one of the records. We're not going to look at both of them. So I think that the record overall is pretty strong, even without those, leaving aside the 3 main hits off it. Of course, there are some duds. So you have Pause for Porno, which is less than pleasant listen when you're listening to the rest of it. I understand. It's kind of the hip-hop style really doesn't shy away from this kind of stuff, but at the same time, I don't know. It doesn't feel like it has a place on even a hip-hop album. Anyway, you see the label, right? The greenish, white-ish label. Pretty standard, kind of Matrixy, as the 1999 was also the year when Matrix came out. So apparently black and green were popular colors for popular culture at the time. So this is Dr. Dre's 2001. 2001 was symbolically ahead of its time, right? And this is, I think it's kind of a message that was passed on. It was released in 1999, but it was called 2001. It's like way ahead of its time. So as the next album that we're going to be looking at today, the Beatles' Abbey Road. This was mentioned on the channel before, and if you're looking at this channel to see Beatles stuff, you already know this information. So I'm going to keep it brief. We're also going to have a special episode on Abbey Road on the Beatles album series sometime later. So it's not worth, I guess, spending more time talking about the history of the album. Was recorded in 1969 and released in 1969. Was the last album that the Beatles recorded together, and it is one of the best albums that they recorded. Some would say this is the best. Now again, there's a lot of discussion within Beatles fans and within the music community or the music fans community on which is the better Beatles album. From a manner of sound, this one was left with a bigger, or has left a bigger mark in the history of music somehow, because if you look at certain lists of best albums ever, or just track lists of people listening to music, you'll see that when they pick the Beatles, if they're not like specific Beatles fans or they're not into that more intently, most of the times this is the album that they refer to. This is the album that people who are not necessarily Beatles fans have in their collections. So clearly it had an influence from that perspective. The cover is iconic. Obviously it was reproduced, parodied, homaged in multiple forms of media, in music, film, television, over and over. It is one of the most iconic images that has to do with the Beatles to this day. The album itself obviously was very successful. It topped the UK album charts for 17 weeks. It was #1 on the Billboard chart. It sold tens of millions of copies worldwide. It was certified 12 times platinum or 13 times. So what can be said? It influenced a bunch of musicians, and it is one of the most iconic albums in the history of music, let alone the Beatles. So yeah, let's not dwell on that. We will have an episode dedicated to Abbey Road, and if you want to see more history about this album, about what it meant for music, everyone and their family have made videos about it. Now, the pressing that we have today is from 1985 or 84, 85. It is from the Blue Box, from the BC13, the UK BC13 from circa 1985. As you can see, it looks pristine. It looks perfect. I have very little, defects that I could notice about this cover. It looks excellent. And actually all of the albums that I have on that box set look excellent. The only one I had some troubles with recently was Please Please Me. I managed to damage the cover a little bit, so I'm gonna get a replacement for that, but the other ones look perfect. You obviously have the front cover and you have the back cover with the track listing. And let's take a look at the record as well. Before we do, this is one of the inner sleeves from the 80s that I still have in all of these albums in the BC13 box set. This one was not, so some of them are printed with some instructions on keeping the records and the record player and so on. This one is a simpler one with just the patent numbers and the Made in Great Britain note here on the bottom. And the record, standard now, for at least for this album, the green apple label, looks excellent, plays excellent. This is the sort of original stereo mix, right? As of this 85 or 84, 85 pressing from the UK with Harry Moss's initials on the run out. And I have to say, it has become one of my favorite Beatles albums and albums of all time as well. Being a Beatles fan, it's very difficult for it not to be. It is exceptional. There are so many tracks on here that I love. It's almost perfect in every way, and the sound, because I was talking about Dre in 2001, was quite ahead of its time for some of the songs. So it's an album recorded in '69, and if I play it to people who haven't heard too much of the Beatles music but have heard mid to late '70s and even some early '80s music, they will potentially, at some of these songs, they can be unsure of when this was recorded, because it does sound like some of the songs were recorded years later. So yeah, exceptional from that perspective. I do like the new mix from 2019 by Giles Martin as well. I chose this because this is the original in the end, and the original mix of Abbey Road was absolutely excellent. So the new mix adds some stuff and still manages to make a very good product, but still, this is the original mix. Abbey Road, The Beatles, 1969 in UK 1985 pressing. In the last episode, we had Led Zeppelin album, which was Physical Graffiti. I mentioned Physical Graffiti, Led Zeppelin 4, sometimes on some of the earlier Led Zeppelin albums, often feature on the top of charts and tops and best albums ever and so on and so forth. And in the preferences of fans, I feel like there was always this duality between preferring Physical Graffiti or Led Zeppelin 4. I chose Physical Graffiti for the last episode. I mentioned the reasons back then, I will not repeat, but I did see comments saying, for many fans, Led Zeppelin 4 would have been on that top 10 list. So today, we have Led Zeppelin 4 from 1971. Metallica, Soundgarden, and other bands were influenced by this. This topped the UK charts. It got to number 2, I think, in the Billboard charts. Again, multiple times platinum, so it was quite successful. And it kind of came as a full confirmation of Led Zeppelin's status. The Stairway to Heaven, I don't have to mention, right? The kind of success and iconic nature of that song. Another thing that I remember as a child, so I don't remember Stairway to Heaven necessarily or Led Zeppelin's songs or albums. I do remember the name of the band because I saw it, around the house, but I didn't really remember the music, now I cannot remember knowing the music back then, but I do remember seeing Stairway to Heaven mentioned when it came to songs that could not be missed on any kind of party or get-together of young people, high school or university students in the late 80s and the early 90s even in Romania. So definitely this was, a song and an album that had left a mark on a lot of people, even back then, and even in a country that was under communism for so long. Obviously, aside from Stairway to Heaven, you have Rock and Roll, you have Black Dog, and a bunch of other songs which are also, earn a status in music history. So definitely a very well-rounded album, and it's no wonder that it makes the charts and tops and best-of lists for so many people. And now the pressing. This so for Led Zeppelin, I found that this is one of the bands whose albums have Japanese issues that are very well regarded. And when I was looking online, I was searching incessantly on Discogs. I actually had a copy, I think from Germany of this album before this one. So with Physical Graffiti, I had a UK copy. I found that the Japanese ones sound at least as good as the European versions of these albums that were the best, to be the best sounding. Moreover, they are better kept than many of the European pressings that I saw for Led Zeppelin's albums, or even US pressing for that matter. So this one is a Japanese pressing from 1979. You can see it still has the obi strip. This was a gatefold, right, as you can see it. Pretty nice. It's quite heavy cardboard stock, this cover. It has some passage of time marks on it, like you can see and can smell it. Actually, you cannot smell it, but I can. It's because this cardboard absorbed a lot of things from the air, right, from the years that it has existed, but still was kept in excellent condition. The spine, as it doesn't have writing on it, but it still looks quite good. So yeah, in excellent condition. Then it also had, as Japanese albums do, a bunch of bonus inner sleeves or inner sheets. This one with the lyrics in both English and Japanese. You can also see the symbols for the bandmates here on the top, right? Then we have this inner sleeve as well, inner sheet with, just commercializing some of the albums of the era. And you can actually see Physical Graffiti is there as well as this album. Other iconic albums as well from the rock age. And you have this inner sleeve for the record with Stairway to Heaven lyrics here on this side. And the track listing with the Zoso and the symbols again for the band here on the top. But I am keeping the record on this Mobile Fidelity sleeve just to protect it better. The iconic red, green, and white label from Atlantic, and this is Led Zeppelin 4. Before we move on to the last one for today, just to mention that Led Zeppelin 4 on that Japanese pressing sounds absolutely excellent, and so does the last item for today, Fleetwood Mac's Rumors. Now this is another album, or another one of those albums, which is topping rankings and lists and tops and whatever of the best albums ever constantly. It's on the top there constantly. I've looked back even up to 20 years back, like early 2000s, and even then it was still, it was also regarded as one of the best albums ever. And it's no wonder, it's an excellent album. It was very successful at the time of its release in 1977. It topped charts, Billboard charts, UK charts, sales charts. It's one of the best sold albums in history, over 40 million pieces sold. So, it's clearly, a staple album for music, or for popular music from the past century. Well, the performance of this album is even more impressive, knowing that the band members, which you can see here on the back, were not getting along too well at the time. They still managed to bring out this masterpiece, to have 4 top 10 singles on this album. It's not unlike Abbey Road and the Beatles, if you think about it, because there was kind of a tense situation between them. They had these kind of outlets from time to time, but you saw how the relationships between them were building up in the Let It Be documentary, in the Get Back documentary, and then they recorded and released Abbey Road as an excellent piece of music. But then, things really quickly crumbled between them. So with Fleetwood Mac, the tensions between the band members apparently led to this exceptional album with 4 top 10 singles. That's nothing to complain about. This was also very influential on a lot of pop rock or soft rock, California rock type of bands and musicians going forward. So after Fleetwood Mac, they kind of created the sound of the California rock. So obviously this has so many reasons, aside from its initial success, to be considered one of the most iconic albums of all time. Now, about the pressing, there are many discussions, and have been many discussions online, related to the best sounding pressings of Rumors. There have been so many pressings, so it is one of the most pressed or repressed, reissued albums of all time, I think, as well. But there were some which were put on the sort of top best 5, 10, whatever pressings of this album, and many of those included the double LP 45 RPM versions that were released, I think, in the early 2010s for the first time or something like that, and then it got reissued. But definitely this one is from 2024. It's one of the reissues. Now, even for these ones, you need to be careful, because you will find the 2024 reissues online, but you have to be careful which version you buy, because not all of the versions hold the exact same matrices and the exact same sources for the pressings. More specifically, this one that says pressed at Furnace is one to be considered among the best sounding ones, and you can see that on the hype sticker here. Now, this is again an album with a gatefold, but again I have the outer wrap still on, so I'm not going to open the gatefold. We can look at the back. Again, we have the track listing with the band members there. Again, here with the hype sticker mentioning that it was the best album of 1977, winning Grammy Awards and so on and so forth. And it's the fact that it's on on a double record, 45 RPM records. Now, the sound, I can vouch, it is indeed amazing. I didn't compare this much with anything else except for a couple of songs which I compared their version on different CDs that I have, and indeed, I mean, it's an excellent sounding album. Now, I don't have other pressings of this album to compare against, so that would have been more difficult to say if this is the best ever. But I took some feedback online, read quite a lot about this, different pressings and versions of it, and I can confirm that what I'm hearing sounds good. So this is the one that I chose. Now, obviously, it is a little bit inconvenient because when you have only 2 or maximum 3 tracks that are not very long, they're like 3 minutes and average tracks on one side, it's inconvenient to listen to it. You have to get up 4 times or 3 times to switch the records. But again, it does compensate with a quality of sound that is absolutely amazing. So this is Fleetwood Mac's Rumors. Well, these were the 10 records that I had for today. The series will probably continue because I have at least 30, 40 more records lined up to be included in these kinds of episodes. We have more Beatles and more Queen, obviously, more Dr. Dre. We have, I don't know, a lot of Bob Dylan, Aretha Franklin, many other musicians from different eras. So if you have suggestions that I didn't catch so far, maybe they are already on my list, who knows. But I will take notice of them in the comments if you want to leave them, and perhaps even if I don't have them already in the sort of predefined list for the next 3-4 episodes, I would consider them because, you know, I have to read online, I have to remember my own albums that I remember from my childhood or songs that were included on certain albums to kind of build this list and build my collection in the end. But I do take advice from people who are watching the channel who kind of have a preference or another. So if you feel like there's an album that should be in these kinds of episodes, or that should have fitted in the first 2, or maybe will fit in the 3rd one, please let me know in the comments. Beyond that, I have to say that probably the next video on the channel will be the one unboxing the Beatles in Mono vinyl box set reissue of 2025. That should come in from the moment I'm recording this in about 10 days, I think, something like that. Hopefully it will arrive in time. When it comes, I want to do an unboxing video of it and a sort of short presentation, but I do have a couple of other things in mind which might not fit in the first unboxing video. One which is comparing a little bit, at least a couple of the records in this new reissue with the ones from the 2014 issue that I still have. I don't have the box set, but I had some records of it. And then also do a nice side-by-side visual comparison between the vinyl box set and the CD box set, which you see right here behind me. So if you're interested in seeing all of those, please stick around with the channel, you know, comment, leave a like, a share, subscribe, whatever, all of the things. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope I'll see you next time.